Hello, Mr. Grant Wells.
G'day, Ben.
What's happening down in Tasmania?
Um, Very quiet at the moment. We've had a couple of nice days of weather, which has been very appreciated, but today's turned grey and overcast again.
Oh, well, we this is our second day of blue sky that we've had in at least 7 years. I think it feels like. Uh,
I think it's been fairly frosty up your way too, hasn't it?
yeah. If you ski, you're having a good time at the minute.
Yep.
Yeah. So, thank you for doing this. I thought you'd be a perfect person to do it because you are very wise, and you've
Is
got
that another code for old?
no, but oh well, no. Um, You've got a fair bit of experience working for media in Tasmania, specifically the newspaper.
Yes, until March this year, I had 34 years with the Advocate.
Yeah, right. Wow, and you're now doing a bit of freelancing.
Yes, taking the leap and yeah, seeing what the big wide world holds for me.
No, very good, very good. So, um, a lot of the diploma photographers are freelancing. So, having that kind of, you're kind of in a similar boat to them, but you've got all that um, experience in the newspaper and media stuff. You know what media organisations want. So, to be able to share that is very nice of you. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, what media organisations want seems to be changing at a very rapid pace, but yeah, I'm still pretty much in touch with what's going on in the big wide world out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, and even since you've left, you've shot jobs for the Mercury and a couple back for your old paper, the Advocate, and things like that.
The Advocate I haven't,
Oh, sorry.
but
Yep.
have been, yeah, because of the regulations involving redundancies and stuff like that, I can't actually shoot for Fairfax
Ah,
for a period of time. Yeah,
yes. So, yep.
but there is that possibility down the track. Yeah,
Once the period closes, yeah. No, that makes
yeah.
perfect sense. Sorry about that. Should have done my research better.
Oh well, it's part of the financial side of things. It's not a operational thing as such.
Yeah. All right. So, what are some of the coolest jobs you've done? And I'm sort of just lumping this question on you without notice.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on your definition of cool. One of the ones I enjoyed the most was getting flown into remote southwest Tasmania and doing 4 days of kayaking around Bathurst Harbour.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, that was seriously cool because I was into kayaking and still am.
Yep.
The only way you can get into Bathurst Harbour is by boat, um, or walk in, or light plane. And the walk in is like days of hiking, so I wasn't likely to be doing that. Um, so when this opportunity came up, it was just wow.
Yeah.
And so that was to do like a magazine feature for the paper, um, which was brilliant. Um, and things like getting up in a chopper and landing on the deck of a Navy ship and doing things like that you don't normally get to do as Mr. Joe Public.
Mm.
There's some cool things you do.
Yeah. Damn right. And the element of not knowing what you're going to be doing when you walk into work, there's a bit of that.
Oh, always,
Yeah.
yeah. Things just happen in a new situation, um, and you need to be fairly adaptable, flexible, and prepared for anything, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, nice one. What about if we switch gears for a minute? Tell me if you feel comfortable about some of the scarier moments or something that happened at work that was a little bit dicey or.
Um, I think probably the scariest moments would be being in the middle of a bushfire situation.
Yeah, wow.
Um, you have training from the various fire authorities about what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Um, you have a certain amount of equipment provided for fire safety, that sort of thing. But the experience of being full on in the middle of something like that certainly gets the adrenaline going.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it is seriously common sense, so you're not putting yourself in a place that you can't get out of quickly.
Yep.
But at times, yeah, the intensity and power of a serious bushfire can be pretty scary.
Yeah, cool. Well, not cool, but cool that you could share that. Thank you. Yeah. Rewarding moments. Something you pushed a shutter, and then sometime later, change has happened, or something really cool, impactful.
I think, I mean, to get awards is always cool.
Yep.
But for me, that hasn't been the most rewarding thing within my career. Actually seeing that you've made a difference to somebody's life in a small way, whether it's highlighting a campaign for a fundraiser to raise money for a kid who's got cancer, or something like that, that you see someone's had their house burnt down, you photograph it, highlight their plight, and people donate stuff to them, and it makes their life more enriched and happier. Things like that are the really rewarding ones.
Yeah. And you're playing it down. It makes it sound like you rock up, you take a photo, and life changes. But a lot of that comes from you getting to know them, getting really invested a bit in the story, and then you can take a photo that when people see it on page 3, they get out their checkbook. Like, whoa.
Yeah, it's making a connection with these people, and the photograph should have that emotional content, that it elicits an emotional response from the person looking at it, not just, oh, pretty photo, flick the page. They get a feeling from the photograph. They hopefully read a really good story that's attached to it.
My next question for you is, how do you prepare for anything? How do you prepare your gear? And how do you prepare your personality to just to be able to tackle anything at any time?
I think a big chunk of that comes from experience, because if you're going to cover something you've never covered before, it's one of those things, well, okay, what do I need? What mindset do I need to be in? So a lot of that purely comes down to experience. Having said that, you should always have your gear ready to go.
Okay.
I always had a gear and like a little rucksack that's full of wet weather gear, because you never know what sort of eventuality you're going to get thrust into.
Yep.
So it was just a bag you could pick up, and you knew you had like wet weather trousers and a good coat and a beanie and sunscreen and a sun hat. It had everything in it that you needed for the elements, pretty much. Your camera gear pretty much goes without saying that you make sure you've got your batteries fully charged and you've got spares of batteries and things like that. Something to wipe your lens with in case you get sprayed with champagne at somebody's celebrating an event. Then you've got to go and shoot a job straight after, but your camera's so sticky you can't use it.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a bit Boy Scoutish, I guess. Just be prepared.
Yeah, cool. And I guess, are you taking heaps of gear? Have you got a boot full of lenses just to prepare for that if you need that one focal length, or?
When I was with the newspaper, the majority of my lenses were zoom lenses.
Okay.
Since I've gone freelance, I've gone back to using prime lenses, purely because I just love how incredibly sharp they are. And yes, I do have lots of equipment, but working for the newspaper, I use the car, I guess, like a vault of equipment, and then you break it down depending on what sort of job you're going to. So take a smallish bag, fill it up with stuff, go and do your job. Then your next job, you might need totally different equipment. So it's sort of a mix and match. Use the car like a storeroom. With my freelancing at the moment, I've got 3 DSLR camera bodies and a bunch of lenses, plus smaller travel type cameras, I suppose, that I can choose to use depending on what the job is.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Oh, plus lighting gear and stands and all that sort of stuff.
So you've bulked out a bit more now that you're a freelancer, or you had more gear when you were working for the newspaper, do you think?
I've probably got more now that I'm a freelancer.
Yeah.
Because I've got more lighting stuff that I use for shooting portraiture and that sort of thing. Whereas basically with the paper, I tried to shoot mainly natural light, but then bumped that up a bit with speed lights. But so that's only smallish lighting gear.
Yep. Yeah, cool. No, that's a really good answer. Now, so we talked about gear. Do you feel, in terms of just preparing yourself mentally for that? I mean, some photographers like to plan and really get into the time of day they're going to shoot, the light they're going to bring, the lens they're going to choose. How does that work?
Yeah, well, that would be lovely to be able to do that. I mean, everybody talks about the golden hour at the start of the day and the end of the day. The reality of the newspapers is you're told to be there at a particular time. It doesn't matter whether it's midday and the light's absolutely horrendous, and you've got to go to a particular location where your subject is. So part of your preparedness is being able to work in really crappy conditions, which means you need to know your gear well and understand the basics of photography so that you can then manipulate the lighting of whatever situation you're thrown into. If you're confident enough that you can work your equipment, almost any situation you can cope with.
Yeah, awesome. That's perfect answer. Thank you. Yeah, because I think a lot of us try and, the especially when you're young, I know it was mine that I could solve a lot of problems by just throwing gear or toys at it. Yeah. So you've walked that.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to manipulate light, photography is basically painting with light.
Yep.
And you don't need a huge, great paintbrush to paint a big picture. You can do it with a small one. It's just the way you use what you've got. And being most of my career with a small regional newspaper, or relatively small, we didn't have access to, storerooms full of lighting equipment and cameras and stuff like that. So you make do with what you've got, and you use. If you understand the principles of photography, you can make a box brownie talk.
Nice, cool. Oh well, I'm going to move you on to just sort of, if that's okay, to a couple. Well, thank you. We want to talk a little bit about. Okay, you've gotten the call, you've got the job. It's possibly going to be an event coverage kind of thing. That's what a lot of newspaper work is. Or it, and all of a sudden you go, well, how do I go about this? How and who do you photograph when you're covering an event? Like,
I guess it depends on what the event is.
Okay. Yep.
Let's assume it's some sort of a festival on a riverbank and there's all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So in that situation, you probably don't have a contact who you're meant to tee up with. So it's pretty much up to you what you shoot.
Yeah.
What I would be looking for from it would be to give an overall impression of the event. So you're trying to capture the colour, the movement, the life of it. But having said that, you don't just go around and shoot a bit of everything. The idea is to have at least one really strong image that you can hang your whole coverage off.
Yep.
So if your editor then decides, okay, we've only got a third of a page to run photo and story, or we want to run 2 pages of stuff, you've got plenty of choice there. Editors always love choice. And sometimes editors aren't really good at picking what photo they should be using. I always had issues with editors over the years. It's you picked the worst photo that I took. But that's the life of being a photojournalist.
Yeah, and I suppose you get paid anyway, really. But
well, yeah, but I think most people are into photography because they want to showcase their art form or their work, or so everyone has some pride in what they're producing, or they should have. If they don't have pride in what they're producing, they're in the wrong game. And so how photographs are represented and used can be a point of contention between editors and photographers.
Absolutely. But, particularly like when awards want tear sheets to prove that you did the work for a magazine, and on that tear sheet is a photo that's either been massacred by a really hardcore crop,
or it's not the photo that you would have selected out of the group of 6 that you did at that one event.
Yeah. So of course your response to that as a photographer should be to puff your chest out, go into the editor's office and scream a lot, or I mean. Is that how to have a long and happy relationship with a news organisation?
Usually, editors are the ones that are better at screaming than photographers. So.
They usually. That's been my experience too. Yeah.
Yeah, you can negotiation and a calm, rational argument is usually better than jumping up and down and screaming, and that applies when you're out on the job as well. I mean, you've got to get along with the people at these events that you're covering to get them to do what you want them to do to make the best image. There's no point jumping up and down and screaming, because all you'll do is put them offside.
True, and look, that's super important. I think, and just to reiterate what Grant's saying, is I feel like I'm talking to the third wall there, to the people that will be listening in the future. If you live in Melbourne, or you live in Sydney, or Perth, or somewhere, or maybe not, I don't know, the chance of you running into that person again is possibly smaller than if you live in Burnie, or Bateman's Bay, or Albury, or somewhere like that. So if you want to get in a screaming match with the mayor of Burnie, who you're going to have to photograph 3 times next week, is it worth it? I'd ask that. Yeah.
No, you've got to maintain a good relationship with the people that you are going to end up working with over the length of your career, however long that career may be. The perfect example of that, the way you tailor coverage, is we had a really serious car accident down here. This is going back quite a few years. 5 girls from a basketball team were killed in one car accident. They were all from a small town. So everybody in that town knew the families and that sort of thing. The coverage that we did as a smallish newspaper was totally at odds with those media representatives who came down from Melbourne with the TV crews or the larger newspapers. They were basically kicking down people's doors trying to get stories, because they didn't care if they broke a relationship with the people that they then had to work with in the future, because they were most likely never coming back again. And it made it, it's a lot of the time that's how media gets a bad rap, is because of that type of coverage in small communities.
That's rough, and it's tough too, because do you knock back that $600 check because you know how brutal you're going to have to be to go out and earn it. I don't know. It's something everyone's going to have to tackle individually, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you live in the community where you're meant to be doing this work, you don't want someone throwing a rock through your window at midnight because you've upset somebody.
Yeah.
You've got to be really diplomatic how you approach difficult situations, and sometimes you're having to photograph people when they're at their absolute worst. They've got a partner who's missing in a boat accident or something like that, and you try not to intrude too much on their grief, but you have to try and work it so that you're there trying to almost help them.
Yep.
So that you're making the rest of the community aware of whatever it is they're going through, with the intention or the hope that other people can help them.
Wow. Very, very eloquent. Very, very, very cool. So, and that just, okay, so that's the long term, how you survive as a photographer in 35 years and stay friends and, you know, be able to walk down the street and, you know, if you ever walk down the street with Grant and Bernie, it's like, you know, it's like the set of Cheers when everyone's like, hey, oh, Elsie, hey. It's so, and that's sort of shows you how well this guy here can do his job. Yeah. So that's the long term, how to do that. What about the short term? There's been a train accident in your town and you're the town's photographer and the media call and say, can you get a photo of this? You drive down there and then there's an angry looking dude looking at you, and he gets angrier every time you lift your camera a little bit. What's the short term way to survive that scenario?
It's always helps if you have some sort of relationship with emergency services people, like fireys, police, SES. So they're aware of who you are. They know you're doing it as a job. You're not just a sticky beak. You're not just there to be a nuisance. It's always important if you're have some sort of relationship that you maintain it. They need to trust you. There have been situations where police have let me into situations where there's dead bodies. We don't want to photograph dead bodies, and because we don't show that stuff in the newspaper. So we don't want to publish photographs of dead bodies. We're not an international paper that will print stuff like that. We just don't do it because of the sensibilities of our readers. So why take a photo of it if we're not going to run it? If we can build a trust with whoever's managing the emergency scene or the accident or whatever, that we're going to respect their scene. We're not going to show stuff that we shouldn't be showing. Usually emergency services will be really cooperative. So it's good to have that relationship. To sort of go back to answering your question, if this is the first time you rock up to one of these scenes because you're relatively new to the game, you probably need to make sure that you identify yourself to whoever the scene controller is without being pushy. I mean, they're busy, they've got a job to do. So you need to stay out of their way pretty much. And unless it's a scene that's going to be changing really rapidly, sometimes you can afford to wait a little bit. So people have sort of settled down a little bit, so they've dealt with serious injuries or whatever. Having said that, you can still shoot from a distance using a long lens and not be right in anybody's face. So you need to assess the situation, and that's all you can do. Unless you're on the ground there, you don't know what you're going to be dealing with. But like the aggro person you said that keeps getting angrier and angrier every time you lift up your camera. I think the best way I dealt with that was just to point out that, hey, I'm here doing a job.
Yep.
I'd rather be at home with my feet up on the coffee table having a beer.
Yeah.
But I'm here doing a job.
Yeah. So definitely no meeting aggression with aggression or any of that kind of stuff. Just explain why you're there.
Not. No, it will achieve absolutely nothing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome advice. So let's crack on. 2 more questions to go. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm great.
Excellent. I'll do a little. We're recording. We're still recording. Outstanding. Okay. So that's kind of the survival guide stuff. Now this is a little bit about how to get the phone call from the editor, or how to become the go-to person for media in your area. What qualities are important to have in a freelancer or in a photographer that editors want to see? What are they looking for?
Number one, outstanding work.
Yep.
That goes with the saying. You need to be available. So if they've tried to call you 3 or 4 times in the past and say, "Oh, sorry, can't do that. I'm busy doing something else." If you're trying to run a business, that makes things really difficult, because you do have to have a diary and you do have to book jobs in. So occasionally you're not going to be available, but ideally you're available 24/7 for them.
They like that.
Especially with newspapers or media, that you can get your shots to them in a really timely fashion.
Okay.
It used to be that newspapers had a deadline at 9:30 at night or something like that. So as long as you were in by then, it was all fine. These days, media organisations don't have a set deadline. It's a rolling deadline. They are constantly trying to update their news feeds. So the faster that you can get images to them, the happier that they'll be.
Yep.
And I say images because they will want multiple images. They'll want horizontal, they'll want verticals, they'll want different crops. So give them variety and give it to them fast.
Yeah. And define fast for me. Is fast drive back home, build your Lightroom catalogue, have a cup of tea, finish your lunch, and get it to them within the next couple of hours?
That would be lovely to have the luxury to be able to do that.
Yeah.
These days, it is almost essential to be able to transmit an image from the scene as you're covering it.
Okay. Yeah.
I know the top shooters for the Age, Sydney Morning Herald, those sorts of guys, they're permanently attached to an iPad mini that's hanging off them. It's part of their camera equipment. And that is set up to feed stuff straight back to the office. So they're almost permanently connected to their office. Obviously, if you're a freelancer, you probably don't have the option of being set up quite that well. No. But you can hotspot your phone or download to your phone and send an image in that way. These days, I think people are quite prepared to accept a diminished quality of image to get it on their website fast.
Wow, okay, yep.
That was talking about, obviously, media and newspapers.
Yep.
But sometimes a commercial client may want things really fast as well, which is becoming a bit more common, I think, that because sometimes you'll do a commercial job and they want to supply those images to the media. So it becomes almost as timely for a commercial situation. I recently shot one that involved a prototype armoured personnel carrier. They didn't tell me before the job that they needed 6 USBs of highly edited images delivered to them before 6 o'clock that night, and I was still shooting at 3:30. So, and I say highly edited. This thing had GoPro stuck all over it that they didn't want in any of the photos, so I had to remove all these cameras that were hanging off it.
So that's like the worst of both worlds. You want the speed of media and the precision of commercial. Ugh.
Yeah, and the high quality file size for commercial work as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Captions. Tell us about captions.
A newspaper photograph. I say newspapers. I'm talking online at the same time here, like their online pages. A lot of the time, new people come into the industry. They'll go to a sporting event. They'll shoot a really great action photo of someone taking a mark in AFL or whatever, but we don't know who it is.
Yeah.
The paper's not going to run it if they can't identify who the person is. So it's imperative that you have accurate caption information for news photographs. It's almost as important as the photo.
Yeah.
And at times it can be difficult to get that information.
Oh, yeah. But it's good to know how vital it is, that because I think a lot of photographers think that if the pixels are brilliant, it's always going to get a run. And that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, unless it's an absolutely brilliant photograph that they can put a generalised caption on and it still makes great sense, it's highly likely that the pic could just end up in the bin. And they'll run your second and third choice because you've got a good caption on that one.
Yeah.
And this applies to like the guys that are over covering the Olympics at the moment too. They still need to provide the information as well as the great shot of someone diving off the 10-metre platform. Still have to know that it's such and such from Brazil and what event they're in.
Yeah. Wow. I have no more questions, and my last question was, what do you need to do to stay safe and stay out of trouble? I think you've already answered that. So unless you've got anything to
the biggies there is common sense.
Common sense, yeah.
Just don't put yourself into a situation that you can't get out of easily.
Yep. Perfect.
Don't upset people that are much bigger than you.
And I think, you could possibly talk about, you could mention, and we could mention, communication's important. Let the editor know what you can and can't provide and how quickly. If they want you to shoot AFL football and you'd really like the paycheck, but your longest focal length is a 50mm lens.
Yeah.
Don't take the check, because you may get paid once, but you'll never get a call from them again. Yeah.
Your reputation will take a serious dive, and in this industry, word gets around really quickly if you're saying you can provide a service that you can't. So be upfront with people. Let them know what your capabilities are, what your specialties are, and be confident that you can do a job before you actually say that you can do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you don't try things that you haven't tried before, but if you're really worried that you can't pull it off, don't do it.
Awesome. Cool. Grant, thank you again for giving your time and wisdom. You happy if I end the recording there?
Sounds good, mate.